The relentless urban murmur of the city often felt like a dull, perpetual ache in Sarah Miller's bones. At 35, a single mother to her 8-year-old son Leo, Sarah's life was a testament to quiet perseverance. She juggled 2 part-time jobs, a night shift as a barista, the scent of stale coffee clinging to her clothes, and early mornings cleaning offices, the sterile smell of disinfectant a constant companion. Their home was a modest, 2-bedroom apartment in the city's low-income district, a sanctuary of warmth despite its worn edges. Returning home after her graveyard shift, the first streaks of dawn barely painting the sky, Sarah would slip through the door, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Yet the sight of Leo, curled in a peaceful slumber, his small chest rising and falling rhythmically, would somehow infuse her with a renewed, fragile energy. She'd move quietly, preparing a simple breakfast, oatmeal or toast, her hands, calloused from scrubbing and serving, sometimes trembling from lack of sleep. She'd meticulously patch a tear in Leo's school uniform, her needle weaving through fabric as carefully as she navigated their precarious finances. Their shared meals were quiet affairs, filled with the unspoken language of love rather than the clink of abundant silverware. The meager contents of her wallet were a constant, nagging worry, but the apartment always felt full, overflowing with the quiet affection she poured into every corner of their shared life. One crisp autumn morning, as Sarah hurried towards her bus stop, her eyes heavy-lidded, she noticed a figure huddled on the cold pavement outside the abandoned bookstore. It was a homeless man, wrapped in tattered blankets, shivering faintly even in his sleep, a solitary paper cup by his side. Sarah paused, her gaze lingering on him. Her own wallet, thin as a whisper, held only a few crumpled dollars, enough for her bus fare and perhaps a cheap coffee. She reached in, her fingers brushing against the single-dollar bill she'd earmarked for her meager lunch. A quiet internal debate flickered, swift and silent. With a gentle sigh, she pulled out the dollar, along with a slightly stale piece of bread she had packed for her break. With a quiet grace, she knelt, her movements careful so as not to disturb his slumber, and gently placed the money and the bread into his cup. It was a small act, almost invisible in the bustling city, but it was a genuine offering from someone who knew the sting of want. This brief, compassionate gesture, made despite her own struggles, was Sarah's save the cat moment, a silent testament to her intrinsic goodness and unwavering empathy, instantly drawing the reader's sympathy and rooting them firmly in her corner. Leo, her beloved son, possessed a peculiar, almost unsettling habit. He would often spend hours hunched over his sketchpad, his small fingers furiously working with crayons and charcoal. His drawings were not the usual fantastical creatures or stick figures of an 8-year-old. Instead, they depicted incredibly detailed scenes of events he couldn't possibly have witnessed, or strange, intricate symbols that repeated themselves in unsettling patterns. Sarah, initially charmed, then mildly perplexed, dismissed it as a vivid imagination, a quirk of her bright, introspective child. Yet sometimes a shiver would trace down her spine at the uncanny accuracy of these depictions. Tucked deeply within a worn secret pocket of Leo's battered school bag, a small faded sketchpad was always carefully guarded. Within its pages, clutched by a rusty paperclip, was a particularly disturbing drawing. It depicted a terrifying blaze, tendrils of smoke curling upwards, engulfing a shadowy figure of a woman trapped amidst the flames. Next to her, a chillingly precise symbol recurred, a broken ring, its jagged edges stark against the fiery background. Sarah had stumbled upon it once, her heart leaping into her throat. She had gently, patiently tried to ask Leo about it, her voice soft with concern. But he had simply shaken his head, his small face unreadable, his lips pressed into a tight, unyielding line. He never explained it, never spoke about the dreams or visions that fueled his art. This cryptic drawing, and Leo's steadfast refusal to discuss it, served as the seed of mystery, hinting at Leo's extraordinary, perhaps precognitive abilities, and a dark, unspoken past potentially tied to their family history, piquing the reader's curiosity and setting the stage for future revelations. The city itself, a sprawling metropolis of steel and glass, operated under the invisible hand of powerful corporations. Its legal system, while outwardly proclaiming fairness and justice, often bent to the will of wealth and influence. Money, Sarah had learned through bitter experience, bought not just power, but silence, and often complicity. It was a city where the truth could be bought and sold, easily buried beneath layers of bureaucratic red tape and the gleaming facades of corporate headquarters. Sarah, a mere cog in its vast, indifferent machinery, was about to discover just how ruthless this system could be. The crisp autumn air in Sarah's apartment, usually a welcome breath after her stuffy shifts, seemed to thicken with dread the morning the official notice arrived. It wasn't a bill or a school reminder, but a formal summons. Sarah Miller was being accused of embezzling a substantial sum of money from the cleaning company she worked for. The allegation stated that funds, entrusted to her for a specific client's account, had vanished. The sheer absurdity of it made her dizzy. She hadn't touched a single cent beyond her meager wages. The cleaning company, Sparkle and Shine, was small, a local operation, and the accusation felt impossibly large, disproportionate to her quiet, almost invisible role within it. The implications were swift and brutal. This wasn't just a financial threat, it was an existential one. A criminal record for embezzlement would not only destroy her ability to earn a living, but, far more terrifyingly, it would revoke her eligibility to care for Leo. The thought of losing her son, the very anchor of her existence, sent a cold spike of terror through her heart. Her humble life, built painstakingly brick by meager brick, felt like it was crumbling around her. Sarah's initial reaction was a whirlwind of shock, panic, and a bone-deep despair. She knew with every fiber of her being that she was innocent. But how could she prove it? She had no alibi, no witness, no financial records to counter the company's seemingly ironclad claims. The legal jargon in the summons was a blur, each word a hammer blow against her already fragile peace of mind. A profound sense of helplessness washed over her. A part of her, the instinct that had always prioritized Leo's stability above all else, urged her to keep silent, to weather the storm as best she could. She had always guarded Leo's unique abilities, his strange drawings, as their private world, fearing that any public revelation would mark them as different, unstable. The thought of bringing that eccentricity into the harsh light of a courtroom filled her with a protective dread. They were already walking a tightrope. This could send them tumbling. Yet, as the days bled into a week, marked by increasingly aggressive legal letters and the chilling realization that her life was no longer her own, the fear began to morph. It wasn't just her livelihood on the line now. It was Leo's future, his safety. The image of him, his innocent face contorted in confusion and hurt, if she were to be taken away from him, fueled a raw, primal instinct within her. The quiet, self-effacing mother began to awaken a fierce, unyielding warrior. This wasn't just about clearing her name. It was about fighting for her child. The inevitable blow came, swift and merciless. A court order, stark and official, was delivered to her door, sealing her fate. It was a temporary restraining order, preventing her from having any contact with Leo until the case was resolved. The reason cited was her pending criminal charges and potential instability as a suitable guardian. Her world, already teetering, violently spun out of control. Leo, confused and tearful, was temporarily placed with a distant, elderly cousin of Sarah's, a woman Sarah barely knew. The apartment, once filled with Leo's quiet presence, felt vast and empty, the silence suffocating. Every toy, every crayon, every one of his strangely accurate drawings, now scattered across his desk, became a painful reminder of his absence. This was her point of no return. There was no going back to the mundane routine of 2 jobs and quiet evenings. Her life had been irrevocably shattered. The desperate need to clear her name intertwined with the burning desire to reclaim her son, a primal force that left no room for hesitation. As she stared at Leo's scattered drawings, particularly that unsettling image of the fire and the broken ring, a desperate flicker of hope ignited amidst her despair. Could they be more than just childish fantasies? Could they hold a key, a hidden truth that she had always dismissed? She remembered the peculiar precision, the uncanny accuracy. She had to know. She had to fight. She understood now, with a chilling clarity, that if she didn't take drastic action, If she didn't unearth the truth herself, she would lose everything. The silent, stoic mother was gone, replaced by a woman consumed by a singular, desperate mission to find the truth no matter the cost and bring her son home. The family courtroom was a small, suffocating box, painted in institutional beige. The air hung heavy with unspoken anxieties, the faint scent of stale coffee mixing with the metallic tang of fear. Child custody cases, mundane tragedies for the legal system, were typically processed with brisk efficiency, rarely warranting more than a passing glance from the bustling city outside. For Sarah, however, this preliminary hearing was everything. It was the first skirmish in a war she hadn't asked for, a battle for her son. She sat rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white. Her lawyer, David Chen, a former prosecutor turned family law attorney, sat beside her. David possessed an earnest idealism, a moral compass that still pointed true despite years navigating the murky waters of the legal system. He had initially been skeptical of Sarah's frantic denials, but something in her quiet desperation, the sheer illogicality of the embezzlement charge against a woman of her meager means, had piqued his conscience. He had taken her case pro bono, a rare act in a city where justice often came with a hefty price tag. The prosecutor, a slick, unctuous man named Mr. Finch, laid out the charges with chilling precision. Documents were presented, tracing the alleged flow of funds, all pointing to Sarah. The evidence, though circumstantial, seemed damning. Sarah listened, her heart pounding against her ribs, a rising tide of panic threatening to overwhelm her. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was barely a whisper. She stammered, trying to explain her innocence, the impossibility of it all. Then, desperate, grasping at any straw, Sarah made a fateful decision. "My son," she blurted out, her voice cracking. "Leo, he sometimes draws things he couldn't know, special drawings. Maybe they could show something." She hadn't intended to reveal Leo's unusual habit in such a public forum. The words tumbled out, born from a desperate, unthinking impulse, an almost primal scream for help. The revelation of Leo's special drawings was her involuntary unveiling, a desperate, unfiltered attempt to offer a glimmer of an alternative truth when she had no other defense. She immediately regretted it, seeing David Chen wince beside her, a silent warning in his eyes. The reaction in the courtroom was immediate, sharp, and telling. Seated in the front row, observing with cold, calculating eyes, was Mr. Robert Vance. He was Leo's paternal grandfather, a man of immense wealth and formidable power, his fortune built on shadowy real estate deals and shrewd, often ruthless investments. Robert Vance was also the estranged brother of Sarah's deceased husband, a man who had long ago cut all ties with Sarah, viewing her humble origins with thinly veiled contempt. He had never accepted her into the Vance family, deeming her an unsuitable match for his son, a mere commoner. Now he saw not a tragic family affair, but a golden opportunity. Robert had been discreetly aware of whispers about Leo's unusual abilities, snippets overheard from a disgruntled former household staff member who spoke of the boy's strange, precise drawings. He dismissed them as superstition, but the possibility of a unique inherited gift, a rare genetic trait, intrigued him. He believed that such an ability, if real, belonged solely to the Vance lineage and should be cultivated for his family's benefit, not wasted by a struggling single mother. He wanted Leo, not out of love, but out of a cold, proprietary desire to control what he considered his family's legacy. He had arrived today, not as a concerned relative, but as a predator, armed with pre-prepared legal documents to assert his claim to Leo's guardianship. When Sarah mentioned Leo's drawings, a flicker of something akin to predatory triumph crossed Robert Vance's face. He leaned forward, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in his rigid posture. This was precisely the weakness he had been waiting for. Presiding over the hearing was Judge Evelyn Carter, a woman with a formidable reputation for strict adherence to the letter of the law. Her stern, unyielding expression was a familiar sight in these courtrooms. She was a meticulous jurist, her judgments based solely on concrete evidence and established legal precedent. She saw Sarah's emotional outburst, her desperate mention of special drawings, as nothing more than a transparent, pathetic attempt to evade responsibility, a sign of instability. Her gaze, initially one of weary patience, hardened with thinly veiled disapproval. She was accustomed to the desperate theatrics of parents facing custody battles, and Sarah's words struck her as particularly flimsy. David Chen, ever the professional, interjected quickly, attempting to mitigate the damage. "Your Honor, Ms. Miller is simply under duress. Her son has a vivid imagination, nothing more. We do not intend to submit any drawings as evidence." He shot Sarah a warning glance, his brow furrowed with concern. He understood the precariousness of their position. A single mother with an embezzlement charge and a child with special abilities was a narrative ripe for exploitation. But it was too late. Robert Vance seized the moment, a shark smelling blood in the water. He rose, his voice smooth as silk, yet laced with an undeniable steel. "Your Honor," he began, his tone dripping with feigned concern, "if I may interject. It has become clear from Ms. Miller's own words that she is unstable. Her claims of a child's special drawings in such a serious criminal matter only serve to highlight her lack of judgment and capacity to adequately care for young Leo. I have long been concerned about my grandson's welfare under Ms. Miller's unconventional care. As Leo's paternal grandfather, I believe it is my duty to provide him with a stable, nurturing environment, one free from such delusions and the instability of pending criminal charges." He then proceeded to present a neatly bound dossier of documents. It was a meticulously crafted case against Sarah, detailed financial statements showcasing his immense wealth and impeccable standing in the community, juxtaposed with Sarah's paltry income and mounting debts. He had even managed to procure selectively edited emails from Sarah, sent during her late-night shifts, portraying her as exhausted and erratic. He concluded with a chillingly prepared psychological assessment, commissioned from a private firm, subtly hinting at Sarah's delusional tendencies and unfit parenting. "Young Leo," Robert declared, his voice resonating with an almost theatrical gravitas, "deserves a future that Ms. Miller, given her current state and circumstances, cannot possibly provide. I am formally petitioning for full, permanent guardianship of my grandson, effective immediately. He will finally have the life he deserves." The gallery of the small courtroom was sparsely populated, but a few local journalists, alerted by the Vance name, furiously scribbled notes. Robert Vance's words, delivered with such practiced conviction, painted a devastating picture of a reckless mother and a concerned, benevolent grandfather. Sarah felt a cold dread creep through her veins. Robert's words, meticulously crafted lies built on a kernel of her own desperate truth, felt like an impenetrable wall. She looked at Judge Carter, whose face remained impassive, but whose tightened lips and slight frown confirmed her internal judgment. The judge, bound by the letter of the law, seemed to be swayed by Robert Vance's undeniable influence and seemingly incontrovertible evidence. Sarah felt her hope begin to drain away, leaving behind a hollow ache of despair. The first battle was lost, and the war for Leo had barely begun. The atmosphere in the Supreme Court courtroom felt heavy, suffocating. Sunlight, usually a welcome visitor, streamed through the tall, arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, creating a solemn, almost oppressive sanctity. This was not the small, relatively informal family court. This was the arena where the city's most significant legal battles were waged, and now, by virtue of Mr. Robert Vance's formidable influence, Sarah's fight for her son had ascended to its hallowed, unforgiving ground. The presence of journalists, their hushed whispers and furtive glances adding to the pressure, indicated that this was no longer a private family matter, but a public spectacle, fueled by the whispers of the child's special abilities. Sarah sat at the defense table, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She felt utterly, terrifyingly alone. Her lawyer, David Chen, sat beside her, a steadying presence, but even his usually confident demeanor seemed strained. He was doing everything he could, but Robert Vance's legal team was relentless, a well-oiled machine of high-powered attorneys and meticulously fabricated evidence. They painted Sarah as a reckless, financially irresponsible, and emotionally unstable mother Her special drawings revelation from the preliminary hearing now twisted into proof of her irrationality. Each piece of testimony, each carefully selected document, chipped away at her credibility, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. "Ms. Miller, isn't it true that you frequently worked late hours, leaving your son largely unsupervised?" Robert Vance's lead attorney, a woman with a voice like polished steel, asked, her words designed to sting. "I worked to provide for him," Sarah answered, her voice tight with suppressed anger and exhaustion. "I always arranged for a neighbor to check on him." But her words felt flimsy against the weight of their accusations. The court's order preventing her from contacting Leo remained in full force. The enforced separation was a torment, a gaping wound in her heart. She couldn't speak to him, couldn't reassure him, couldn't even ask him about the drawings, the one fragile thread of hope she clung to. The thought of Leo, alone and confused, weighed on her more heavily than any legal threat. The silence of his absence in her life was deafening. Judge Evelyn Carter, perched high on the bench, her face a mask of judicial impartiality, surveyed the courtroom. Her gaze, however, lingered longer on the clock. The pressure was immense. She had set a strict deadline for her verdict, by the end of the day. If Sarah could not present compelling, irrefutable evidence by then, she would permanently lose custody of Leo, and the embezzlement charges, now intertwined with the custody battle, would almost certainly lead to jail time. The ticking clock on the courtroom wall seemed to boom, each second an agonizing hammer blow against Sarah's dwindling hope. The afternoon wore on, each testimony a fresh assault on Sarah's spirit. Robert Vance's carefully orchestrated narrative of concern and responsibility, backed by his vast wealth, seemed unassailable. He had even presented an expert witness, a child psychologist, who testified that Leo's drawings were unhealthy coping mechanisms for a child experiencing maternal neglect and emotional instability. Sarah felt a rising tide of nausea. As the sun began to dip below the city skyline, casting long, dramatic shadows across the courtroom, Sarah felt a profound sense of despair settle over her. She had fought with every fiber of her being, clung to every shred of truth, but it seemed utterly futile. Robert Vance's elaborate web of deceit, meticulously constructed to frame her and snatch Leo away, was too strong, too powerful. She recalled his mocking sneer at the preliminary hearing, Judge Carter's cold, scrutinizing gaze, and the horrifying image of Leo being led away from her, his small hand reaching out. Was this it? Was she truly going to lose everything? Her hands, usually steady despite their calluses, now trembled uncontrollably, mirroring the chaos raging within her. Her mind spun, a whirlwind of fear and exhaustion. The air in the courtroom felt impossibly thin, suffocating her. She felt herself teetering on the brink of collapse, the last vestiges of her strength draining away. Hope, once a faint flicker, was now extinguished, leaving only the bitter taste of defeat. 40005, 0004, 0003. The digital clock on the courtroom wall, usually a silent, unobtrusive marker of time, now blared its urgency. Judge Carter, her face etched with a weary solemnity, cleared her throat, preparing to deliver the final, devastating verdict. Robert Vance, radiating a smug, almost imperceptible triumph, adjusted his tie, his gaze fixed on the judge, ready to receive his undeserved victory. The air was thick with anticipation, each second drawing closer to the public validation of his lies and the definitive erasure of Sarah's life as she knew it. Just as Judge Carter's voice was about to boom through the speakers, a small, sudden silhouette surged forward from the back of the courtroom. It was Leo, his small body a blur of motion, fueled by a desperate, childlike resolve. He had slipped past the distracted bailiffs, a kind-faced court clerk having looked the other way, her eyes wide with sympathy for Sarah. With a burst of astonishing speed, he lunged for the large, empty whiteboard near the witness stand, a teaching aid used for complex legal explanations. He hadn't uttered a single word, but his intent was clear. Clutched in his small hands were charcoal sticks and a bottle of India ink, mysteriously acquired and hidden in his backpack. With a furious, almost frantic intensity, he began to draw on the pristine white surface. His movements were swift, precise, and utterly mesmerizing. The courtroom, which had been on the cusp of an irrevocable judgment, fell into a stunned silence. His drawing materialized with startling clarity. A detailed blueprint of a hidden room within Sparkle and Shine's corporate office, complete with a concealed safe and a diagram illustrating the exact flow of the embezzled funds. Intricate arrows traced the money's path through a labyrinth of shell corporations leading to offshore accounts. Every detail was chillingly accurate, a map of shattered light and hidden truth, translated onto the whiteboard. And then, at the very corner of his drawing, he etched a small, distinct symbol, a broken ring, its jagged edges unmistakable, matching the one Sarah had seen in his old sketch pad. Julian Vance, who had been smirking from the plaintiff's table, froze, his triumphant expression curdling into a ghastly pallor. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, dilated with raw, visceral terror. He recognized the symbols, the layout of the hidden room. Details only a select few, including himself, were privy to. And then, his gaze locked onto the broken ring, a symbol intimately tied to his own dark past. A low, guttural growl escaped his throat. You madwoman, you taught him nothing, he shrieked, his composure shattering. It's just some ridiculous scribbling, a lunatic's ramblings. Get him out of here, now! He waved his hand frantically at the bailiffs, his perfectly tailored suit momentarily forgotten in his exposed rage. He even lurched forward, as if to physically tear down Leo's drawing, his mask of benevolent grandfather utterly obliterated by panic. This was the Nintho, in bated breath moment. The bailiffs, momentarily stunned by Leo's sudden appearance and Julian's explosive reaction, finally sprang into action, moving to seize the boy. Judge Carter, initially bewildered by the disruption, frowned, her gavel hovering. It seemed as though Leo would be dragged away, his desperate attempt dismissed as a child's tantrum, before his silent revelation could fully sink in. The red numbers on the clock flashed. Suoro, Soro, 01, Suoro, Soro, R. The final announcement was seconds from being made, the irreversible stamp on Julian's fraudulent victory. Just as the lead bailiff's hand reached for Leo, his fingers brushing the child's shoulder, Leo, with an uncanny, almost supernatural focus, turned his head. His eyes, wide and brilliant, locked directly onto Judge Carter. An inexplicable wave of energy, subtle yet undeniably potent, seemed to emanate from the boy, washing over the judge. Judge Carter suddenly stiffened, a fleeting memory, sharp and vivid, flashing through her mind. A decades-old cold case, strikingly similar, that she had once dismissed due to insufficient evidence. The memory was fleeting, but it triggered something profound. Her gaze snapped back to Leo's drawing, lingering on the broken ring symbol, then darted to Robert Vance, whose face was now ashen, sweat beading on his forehead. Leo hadn't just drawn. He had, in that inexplicable moment, conveyed a truth that bypassed words, a silent narrative only the judge could truly hear. Robert Vance, his panic overriding all sense of self-preservation, let out a choked, involuntary confession. How does he know about that ring? About how I buried the evidence? About the vault? It was a family secret. His voice, though a pathetic whimper, ripped through the stunned silence of the courtroom, exposing not only his complicity in the embezzlement, but a chilling, inadvertent revelation of his true motive: the systematic destruction of Sarah's family to gain control of Leo. He even blurted out details about hiring another employee to frame Sarah, the exact amount of money he'd siphoned off, and his true aim to gain full guardianship of Leo for his own twisted ends. Daniel, the sharp-eyed reporter from the local paper, who had managed to sneak in and position himself near the front, had been recording everything on a highly sensitive, covert device, his face pale with shock, but his eyes alight with fierce journalistic triumph. He'd secretly suspected Leo's abilities from earlier reports and had prepared for this exact scenario. The crowd's reaction was a swift, overwhelming torrent. From initial confusion, their faces shifted to disbelief, then horror as Robert Vance's panicked, desperate confession echoed through the chamber, amplified by the courtroom's acoustics. A collective gasp, then a rising tide of angry murmurs, swelled into an indignant roar. "He's a fraud," someone screamed, the words igniting a new level of fury. "He framed her. He tried to steal her child." People surged forward, not in a chaotic mob, but with a unified sense of betrayal and righteous anger, clamoring for answers, for justice. Robert Vance, utterly unmasked, was no longer the powerful, charismatic businessman. He was a cornered animal, trembling, trapped. He tried to push through the enraged onlookers, but hands reached out, grabbing, holding him back. The bailiffs, their faces now reflecting a dawning comprehension of the situation and the undeniable evidence unfolding before their eyes, no longer moved to apprehend Leo or Sarah. Instead, they moved swiftly and decisively to secure Robert Vance, recognizing the volatile shift in public sentiment and the undeniable truth of the moment. Sarah stood amidst the pandemonium, utterly drained but strangely exhilarated. She looked at Leo, whose small hand, still clutching the charcoal, now reached for hers. His drawing, a testament to his extraordinary gift, now glowed with the undeniable light of truth. Then, she looked at the bewildered, angry faces of the citizens of the city, their initial judgment replaced by awe and burgeoning respect. They weren't just seeing a struggling single mother. They were witnessing a truth-teller, a symbol of defiance against overwhelming power, and a child with a profound, almost mystical ability. Her quiet, desperate act, fueled by a mother's love, had not only saved her dreams but had ripped open the festering wound of corruption at the heart of the city's elite, exposing a monstrous secret that had haunted her family for years. The master storyteller had orchestrated a climax that was not only a triumph of truth, but a profound personal vindication, revealing the chilling depths of the villain's depravity and the hidden strength of an unassuming hero. The grand courtroom, moments ago a maelstrom of shock and righteous fury, slowly settled into a stunned, disbelieving silence. The immediate aftermath of Robert Vance's panicked confession was a whirlwind of motion. Police officers, who had been among the bewildered onlookers, swiftly moved to apprehend Robert Vance. His desperate struggles were futile. The colossal weight of his public exposure and crimes seemed to crush him, reducing him to a pathetic, broken figure. Mr. Robert Vance. Detective Harding, a stern-faced officer who had arrived on the scene quickly following Daniel's urgent call, stated, his voice resonating with cold authority. You are under arrest for multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and attempted unlawful guardianship. Anything you say can and will be used against you. The sharp click of the handcuffs was final. Robert, stripped bare of his arrogance and charm, was led away, his expensive suit now disheveled, his eyes wide with a raw terror that eclipsed his earlier smugness. His downfall was absolute, a chilling testament to the unforgiving nature of truth. The subsequent investigation, fueled by Leo's intricate drawing, Daniel's comprehensive recordings, and the rapid uncovering of financial trails Robert had tried to bury, swiftly unearthed a vast network of corruption, confirming the extent of his depravity. His trial was swift and merciless, ending with a lengthy prison sentence, a fate entirely commensurate with the depth of his crimes and the lives he had attempted to ruin. Amidst the lingering shock, Judge Evelyn Carter stepped down from the bench. Her usual impassive demeanor was gone, replaced by a profound sense of introspection and dawning humility. She walked directly to Sarah, who still stood by Leo, clutching his small hand, the charcoal drawing glowing faintly in the diffused light, a silent beacon of truth. Judge Carter's voice, when she spoke, was surprisingly soft, yet firm with conviction. Ms. Miller, she began, her gaze meeting Sarah's, I owe you a profound apology. I prided myself on my impartiality, on upholding the letter of the law, but I allowed myself to be swayed by appearances, by power, and by a rigid adherence to what I thought was evidence. I dismissed your plea, and I almost dismissed your son's extraordinary truth. I failed you, and I failed the very principles of justice I swore to uphold. Her apology was heartfelt, raw with shame and true remorse, a poignant recognition of her past misjudgment and the moral blind spot that had allowed corruption to flourish. Sarah looked at her, her expression softening. She saw not the dismissive judge, but a woman genuinely grappling with a profound realization. It takes courage to admit a mistake, Your Honor, Sarah said, her voice quiet but steady. The truth is often difficult to see, especially when it's cloaked in power and illusion. Judge Carter nodded, her eyes glistening. Then let me try to make amends. Ms. Miller, What you and your son have revealed today is immeasurable. You've not only exposed a deep-seated corruption, but also reminded us all that truth can manifest in the most unexpected ways. The embezzlement charges against you have been summarily dismissed. Your record will be expunged. And in recognition of the profound injustice you've endured and the integrity you've displayed, I am personally recommending that the court award you substantial reparations for Mr. Vance's seized assets. She paused, then continued, her voice laced with profound respect. This compensation, Ms. Miller, will be significant, a sum that will more than cover your medical needs and ensure your financial security for life. But this is more than just money. I want to offer Leo a dedicated, state-of-the-art educational environment. I have already contacted the Evergreen Academy for Gifted Youngsters, a specialized institution renowned for nurturing unique talents. They are prepared to offer Leo a full scholarship, ensuring he can develop his extraordinary abilities in a safe, understanding, and supportive environment, free from prejudice. You, Ms. Miller, will be provided with comprehensive support to ensure you can remain close to him. This was not just a job offer. It was an offer of artistic freedom, financial liberation, a platform to shape the future of art, and a significant recognition of her unique ability to discern truth and beauty where others saw only flaws. Sarah considered the offer. Her life had been one of quiet struggle, her battles fought on the loom of her glass projects. But the past few weeks had shown her the profound impact one individual could have when armed with truth and courage, when embracing their unique flaws as strengths. Her mother's legacy, the truth-weaving gift, was meant for more than just personal expression. It was a tool for justice, a voice for the voiceless. She looked at the now reverent faces of the courtroom citizens, their eyes filled with gratitude and newfound respect, their initial judgment replaced by awe. "I accept, Your Honor," Sarah finally said, a faint, genuine smile gracing her lips. "Not for any personal gain, but for Leo, for the truth, and for every family who struggles against invisible injustices. My only request is that we establish a robust oversight committee for all family court proceedings, particularly those involving allegations of parental instability, to ensure that no child or parent ever faces such a battle alone again, and that all staff involved in today's proceedings undergo mandatory retraining in recognizing non-traditional forms of communication and evidence." Judge Carter, visibly relieved and deeply moved, immediately agreed, her resolve to reform the system unwavering. The news of Robert Vance's dramatic downfall and Sarah and Leo's extraordinary revelation spread like wildfire, not just through the city, but across the nation and even internationally. Sarah Miller, the struggling single mom, became the truth weaver, a quiet legend. Journalists from major networks flocked to the city, eager to hear her story. Sarah, with Daniel by her side, the tenacious journalist whose covert recording had delivered the definitive proof, leading to a prestigious award and a promotion to senior investigative reporter at the Arcadia Independent, granted a series of carefully chosen interviews. She spoke not of vengeance, but of the importance of vigilance, transparency, and the profound power of art to expose hidden truths. She spoke of the forgotten wisdom of listening to the subtle energies of places, of the stories embedded in objects, and how such intuition, when combined with evidence and courage, could dismantle even the most formidable lies. Later that week, as the dust began to settle, Sarah and Daniel sat together in a quiet corner of a park, watching Leo play nearby. The vibrant colors of autumn painted the trees around them. "You know," Daniel mused, putting down his notebook, a genuine look of wonder on his face, "I still can't quite wrap my head around it. The way Leo's drawing, it just came to life. And Robert Vance's confession, it was like he was compelled to speak the truth. What was it, Sarah? What did Leo do?" His journalistic curiosity, always keen, was now tinged with a profound awe. Sarah smiled, her fingers absently tracing the delicate silver leaf hair clip she had always kept hidden in Leo's old sketchpad, the one that matched the symbol in his drawings. She now wore it clipped to her collar, openly, proudly. Its subtle gleam was a constant reminder of her lineage and her triumph. "This, Daniel, is the lumen clip," she explained softly, her voice filled with a quiet reverence. It was my husband's, passed down through his family, the Vances, but not the Robert Vance branch. My husband's side was different. They were known as sense weavers, able to perceive the echoes left on objects and in places where strong emotions or significant events occurred. The clip, it amplifies that connection. It helps us read the imprints left on old documents, on places where crimes occurred, even on a person's aura when they're under duress. The patterns, the codes in Leo's drawing, they weren't just imagination. They were truths he perceived, translated into art, amplified by the clip's unique resonance, and unveiled by the specific emotional frequency Robert Vance emanated in his panic. A shadow of old pain crossed her face, quickly replaced by a quiet resolve. My husband's mother, Leo's paternal grandmother, she had this gift too. She recognized Julian's corruption early on, before he was powerful. She tried to expose him, using her subtle insights to gather information about the broken ring and the hidden vault. But she was alone. Robert silenced her, fabricated evidence to discredit her, and made her disappear from their lives, painting her as unstable before she could finish her work. He believed he had erased her and her truth forever. He never found this clip. He thought he had destroyed everything. But the truth, it just awaits the right light to bind it whole. Sarah's voice was steady, devoid of bitterness, filled instead with the calm strength of someone who had faced their deepest fears and emerged triumphant. I realize now why she disappeared. She was trying to warn everyone. Leo. He completed her work, Daniel. He finished the symphony of truth she started, not with words, but with vision, with art, and with justice. Daniel looked at her, his respect deepening into something akin to reverence. You didn't just expose a corrupt businessman, Sarah. You brought justice to your family, you redeemed a legacy, and you gave the city back its soul. Sarah nodded, gazing at the beautiful play of light through the autumn leaves. My husband's family believed that the truth, like light itself, can be fractured, scattered, but it will always find its way through the cracks. Sometimes it just needs a little help to shine. The city had indeed found a new calm, a profound sense of peace built not on false promises, but on transparency, integrity, and the quiet, unwavering power of truth, meticulously woven into the very fabric of its rebirth. The city, once dominated by the cold gleam of corporate power, now vibrated with a different kind of energy. The air, once thick with unspoken resentments and the pressure of relentless competition, felt lighter, imbued with a palpable sense of community and renewed purpose. This was Viridian's second spring, a period not just of economic growth, but of profound societal and ethical renewal. The gleaming skyscrapers still touched the sky, but beneath them, a subtle yet significant shift had taken hold. A quiet, widespread appreciation for authenticity, for the unique, and for the profound beauty that could be found in the unexpected. At the heart of this transformation, yet humbly unassuming as ever, was Sarah Miller. The tremor that once shook her hands had long since faded, a phantom limb of past trauma, leaving her movements steady and sure. The successful surgery for her rare undiagnosed condition, an urgent procedure fully funded by the court's reparations from Robert Vance's seized assets, had not only restored her physical health, but also her boundless energy. Her vast, light-filled studio, a converted loft in a revitalized downtown district, hummed with activity. Her art, a unique blend of salvaged materials and reclaimed objects, now transformed into intricate, narrative sculptures, was sought after by collectors worldwide. Each piece told a story, meticulously crafted, a testament to resilience and the extraordinary beauty found within the discarded and the overlooked. She had become a quiet icon, her work a poignant reminder that even shattered pieces could be reborn into something magnificent. Sarah had fully embraced her role as a guiding force behind the city's burgeoning social justice initiatives. She personally oversaw several community art projects, ensuring that the voices of underrepresented artists, particularly those from marginalized communities, found their rightful place in the spotlight. Her keen eye for genuine talent, unclouded by the prejudices of the past, unearthed hidden gems that consistently captivated both critics and the public. She didn't just advocate for artists, she championed people, creating a supportive ecosystem where creativity and healing could flourish, regardless of background or past struggles. The principle of paying it forward had become the bedrock of Sarah's life. Beyond her community projects, she had co-founded the Lumina Foundation with Daniel Chen, a nonprofit organization that had grown into a formidable force for change. Housed in a beautifully renovated old warehouse near the revitalized city waterfront, the foundation offered comprehensive support to families grappling with legal injustices and to children with unique, often misunderstood abilities. It provided generous grants, covering everything from legal aid to specialized educational resources. Crucially, it offered tailored mentorship programs, connecting struggling families with legal professionals and educators who understood their unique challenges. Sarah herself often led workshops, her voice calm and encouraging, sharing her story not just of overcoming adversity, but of finding strength in vulnerability and the transformative power of embracing one's authentic self. Her narrative, often shared with heartfelt sincerity, became a beacon of hope, inspiring countless individuals to pursue justice and embrace their own unique gifts despite formidable obstacles. The memory of Robert Vance's dramatic downfall and the subsequent uncovering of his widespread corruption served as a potent, unspoken lesson etched into the collective consciousness of the city. The city, once seduced by superficial charm and illicit gains, now valued authenticity, transparency, and ethical leadership. The courts, influenced by Judge Carter's public apology and her subsequent tireless advocacy, had undergone significant reforms, particularly in family law, ensuring that cases were handled with greater scrutiny and empathy. Judge Evelyn Carter, now retired from the bench, had dedicated her post-judicial life to overseeing the new oversight committees, ensuring that justice was truly blind to wealth and power. She often publicly lauded Sarah, famously stating at a Lumina Foundation gala, "Sarah Miller taught us that true justice doesn't just uphold the law, it seeks the truth, no matter how deeply buried, and protects the most vulnerable." Her words, echoing a newfound wisdom, underscored the city's unwavering commitment to integrity. The very physical heart of the city found its own symbolic reflection of Sarah's journey. In the city's central public square, once a sterile expanse of cold stone, now stood a vibrant, interactive art installation. It was Leo's now completed Visions of Truth, a monumental, ever-evolving mosaic of glass and light. It pulsed with iridescent energy, catching the sun's rays and refracting them into a dazzling spectrum of colors that danced across the square. Each intricate shard of glass, each deliberate fracture, was not a flaw but a deliberate design choice, a shimmering vein of light that added depth and character, revealing new patterns and subtle narratives with every shift of light. A discreet plaque at its base, installed by a grateful city, simply read, "Visions of Truth," a testament to unseen abilities, unyielding motherhood, and the light that breaks through. It was a living, breathing monument to a quiet child who had seen beyond the surface, and a resilient mother who had dared to believe. On a sun-drenched Saturday morning, a gentle melody of children's laughter and light chatter drifted across the square. Sarah Miller sat on a polished stone bench near Leo's magnificent installation, her cherished lumen clip now clipped to the collar of her elegant linen dress, its silver leaf gleaming softly in the sunlight. A sleek black cat, the descendant of the timid alley stray that had once adopted her, now plump and healthy, dozed contentedly on her lap, a soft purr vibrating through Sarah's body. She was patiently guiding a young girl, whose hands trembled noticeably, through the initial steps of a simple light sculpture, her voice calm and encouraging. The girl, a new mentee from the Lumina Foundation, was meticulously arranging colored glass shards into a small, intricate pattern. Sarah looked out at the bustling square, at the children playing, their faces alight with wonder as they gazed at Leo's Visions of Truth. She glanced down at the gleaming clip on her chest, then at the contented cat, and finally her gaze settled on Leo, now 11, who sat nearby, his concentration absolute as he sketched. He wasn't just drawing anymore, he was interpreting, translating complex data into visual narratives for a pro bono case Daniel was handling for a wrongly accused individual. A profound, serene smile spread across Sarah's face, a genuine expression of peace and fulfillment. She was no longer just a struggling single mom or a survivor. She was a mentor, a visionary, a living testament to the power of truth and love. Viridian had indeed found its second spring, a period of not just renewal, but a flourishing life built on authenticity, integrity, and the quiet, unwavering power of unseen heroes. Her legacy, and the unique beauty she and Leo brought forth from every shattered piece, would now flow as freely and abundantly as the light itself, illuminating and nourishing generations to come. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining us on this journey.